Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been working with John and Bill for a lot of years. When I think about meeting John and Bill, I came out here and I really didn't know what to expect. We were in the business of producing microbials and we felt like they could be a really good fit as an ingredient in a fertilizer. When you do that, you are able to maintain your brand, and you're differentiating yourself in the marketplace. So as a fertilizer producer and interested in fertilizer sales, it gives you quite a leg up. Well, John and Bill were the first ones that we approached that bought into that idea. And I still think that it's the best way for people in the business to go. So I named this Innovation and Adaptation. And I looked at a few things this morning about innovation. When you think about your farming process, the challenges that we're going to discuss today, you're going to have to be a little innovative in your approach. I read an article in the Wall Street Journal a guy sent me today. Canada, the politicians are urging the farmers to reduce fertilizer emissions by 30%. The Netherlands are mandating a reduction. It's not here yet, but it's coming. And it's something for us to think about. And it's one of the places that microbials can truly help with when you look at nutrient use or fertilizer use efficiencies. So when I was thinking about innovation, I had three quotes here. Albert Einstein said, "We cannot solve a problem by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them." So we created a lot of the problems with overtilling. We created a lot of problems with overuse of fertilizers. We've done a lot of things that we need to correct. And the way you correct a healthy soil is to bring biodiversity or more microbial action into it. Henry Ford said most people spend more time and energy going around problems than trying to solve them. So we can sit around and complain, or we can know that we have an issue, but until we take the steps to correct them, we're not using our heads, we're not being innovative. And this is the Harvard Business Review. I wanted to change the wording a little bit, but it says, "It's tough when markets change and the people within your company don't." Well, that also holds true with customers. So John and Bill and AgMax can be innovative, but it requires innovation on your part and to think through and adapt new processes and practices to improve your crop production. So when we think about this, let's think about the challenges, not just the drought, not just the crop prices, not just the fertilizer, but let's think about what we're doing or what we face over the next 10 to 20 years. One, we're feeding a growing population. We've been saying that for a long time, but now I look at it a little differently. When you look at it domestically, it's not just thinking in terms of better protein and quality, but it's satisfying consumers' tastes and expectations. So when I think of this, I think of barley, I think of organic beer, and it's just people have wider taste and more things that they're demanding, and they pay a premium for that. So as a grower, it is an opportunity and a challenge to think how you can satisfy that demand. Developing third world countries, they're still looking for better quality protein and meeting their basic needs. So they're looking at a rising need for food of a higher quality. Ties right into what I was talking about with Canada. Canada is the 8th leading agricultural exporter in the world. We're higher than that, but I mean, it's a big market they're impacting. And with the uncertainty in the world right now, and with this demand, we can use microbes or we can use biologicals to become more efficient. The second one was providing a livelihood for you guys. A lot of times, or a lot of years, we have the incomes flat, and a lot of us are depending on off-farm income. It's a challenge. So how do we keep people in the industry? How do we keep young people motivated to want to do this? It's a challenge that our country faces. So The third one, and this makes the news more than anything else, is protecting the environment. I do a lot of work out west. Water quality in California is an issue. Water availability throughout the whole West is an issue. And we face dry weather here in the Southeast and in the plains as well. So the availability of water is an issue and will be an issue. Microbes can help with that. The heat and drought stress from climate change is real. I'm not going to say what's causing it, if it's natural or if it's induced, but regardless, it's real. And so we're dealing with more heat and drought stress. So what do we need? We need microbes that can help mediate the stress factors so that the plant can stay healthier during these stressful periods. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Another part of the environment is your soil, and it's a loss of biodiversity. We have a loss of biodiversity because we plant monocultures, we plant rotation crops. It's really not a big rotation. There's not a lot of diversity. We do a lot of plowing. So we've lost a large part of what held these plains together for years, which was a healthy interaction between soil microbes and the overall plant biome, or the roots, and how it all held together. So when I was thinking about that, and I asked Bill today, we were out looking at some corn. In the United States, really since the 1930s, when you look at the historical corn average, we've looked at about a 2 bushel per year, if you follow that straight line through that graph, increase. And that's because of better genetics. That's better because of better crop protection chemicals. That's better understanding of soil fertility, how we apply fertilizers, et cetera. So as we lose crop protection chemistries, as we become more restrictive, biologicals are a way that we're going to have to utilize to continue this trend and advance, because the demand for the corn, the demand for the grains is going to get higher and higher. Just so that I would know, I looked at the yield in Missouri, and it's actually a steeper curve than what it is on a national basis. So the productivity here over the past, since 1930, has been very good. A lot of adaptation to better practices. Soybeans, you gain about 0.45 bushels per year over the last, since 1993. And that's held pretty constant. So that's better genetics, that's better fertility, that's better production practices. So I just threw that in there because as we lose crop protection chemicals, because the companies can't invest in them, they can't get them through the regulatory process, et cetera, we have to find an alternative to maintain this increase in production. So when you think about that, in the 1960s, we had improved usage of synthetic fertilizers, blend plants, ammonium, diammonium phosphate, monoammonium phosphate. We had mines producing muriate of potash. We had a good supply of urea and ammonium nitrate back then, which was, we developed those technologies largely during World War II because they were used in explosives. So we had that capacity. We became better and we started utilizing these fertilizers. Then in the 70s into the 80s, I remember when I was in school, getting out in 1980, we must have had 20 different soybean herbicides. This was before Roundup was used, or we had the crop traits so that we could spray Roundup over the top. One of my first jobs in microbiology was we were using Allichlor and Metolachlor. That was Dual and Lasso. And we were looking to see what impact that had on the microbes in the soil. And that's kind of what started my interest in soil microbiology. And then going into the 90s, we saw the seed trait development. And so the next real revolution we're looking at is the biological industry. And I looked today at a list of, It was from a group of investors that are always looking to get money or to raise money for new technologies. And I must have seen 25 new biological companies. And I get a lot of questions about different products. Well, the word biological is about as broad as saying crop protection, because it really doesn't describe it. There's microbes that, there's mycorrhiza, there's fungi for fungicides, there's a number of different things. So you're not talking apples for apples when you're talking about all the different kinds of products. So when you're reading about the biological industry, you have to remember there's a tremendous amount of goals from these companies, and they are not developed and they're not made for the same practices. What I'm going to be looking at today as we're discussing is nutrient use efficiency. I think that's where we can have the biggest impact. But you got to remember there's going to be biocontrolled products. And when I say biocontrolled, it's when we're looking at bionematicides. It's when we're looking at fungicides, when we're looking at bioinsecticides. So we're looking to the biological industry to come in and kind of save the day from synthetic chemistry, for be it fertilizers or crop protection. So when you look at, if you look at the current money spent annually, fertilizers, $155 billion a year. Synthetic crop protection, $56 billion a year. Seed and genetics, $90 billion. Well, the biologicals at this point in time are only $7 to $9 billion on a global, in the United States. But if you look at that compound, the rate of gain, the expectations are 3.7% a year for crop protection products, 3.8% compound annual growth rate in the synthetic fertilizers. But you look at what they're looking for in the biological industry. They're looking at 15% per year. So by the year 2030, we'll be up closer to $17 to $20 billion a year. That's a lot of growth. So what we do, we supply biological products to the fertilizer industry. So we are looking at the biocontrol industry and the biological sector. You can see that 2020, you're looking at $3.14 billion. By 2025, it's almost doubled. Nutrient enhancement, this is where John and Bill we developed a relationship. 1.4 now. By 2025, again, almost double. And the biostimulant industry, again, almost doubled in 5 years. So a lot of growth is going to happen over the next 5 years. Some of the issues with the grower attitudes, so with the biocontrol, when we're looking at nematicides, we're looking at herbicides and fungicides. As more companies participate, they're fully expecting that to happen. With the fertilizer side, there's a lot of interest, and we expect a lot of support from governments to, just like this happening in Canada, we expect a lot of this to be mandated. In the biostimulant sector, it's still kind of, there's a lot of skepticism, but I'll tell you, we've seen it work time and time again. So this is where the growth's going to come from in the biological sector. So the PGPRs, that stands for Plant Growth Promoting Rhizobacteria, and that tells you a lot. It's going to promote growth, plant health. It does its job along the root surface, primarily between the cortex and about 2 millimeters out into the soil. And when we apply these, the reason we use Bacillus is because they produce bacterial spores. Not all bacteria produce spores, but they give us a very stable base from which to operate. It allows us to withstand UV light. It allows us to stand a temperature range of basically from, it doesn't matter how cold, We don't like to keep it outside if it's over 110 degrees, something like that. But it's a very stable, it's a formulation that mixes well with fertilizers. And what happens is those spores, once they are applied through the fertilizer, grow, develop, colonize along those root surfaces, and they're supplying a host of compounds that promote growth. So we're looking at, when we're thinking of these plant growth bacteria, there's a lot of interest today in nitrogen-fixing products. Well, a lot of bacteria in the soil have the nitrogenase enzyme in them. It's what you have that's in the nodules on the soybeans, but these are free-living bacteria. We're trying to harness their capacity to fix nitrogen so that we can maintain and feed that plant throughout the season. We can have a more stable form of nitrogen supply that is not as subject to loss, to volatilization, or through leaching. So it's a keen area of interest. At the current time, the bacillus that we are selling have that enzyme in them that converts atmospheric nitrogen to plant available forms, ammonia. And so there's some of that going on. We see that stimulated. What Bill and John do, they apply some sugars in there that serves as an energy source. And what we find is when you have a good energy source and you have the bacteria that are capable of fixing nitrogen, we're seeing an uptick in the population of nitrogen-fixing bacteria that can and do promote it at the current time. So then you have mineral solubilization. We'll be talking a little bit about phosphorus solubilization. Phosphorus is an immobile nutrient. Your roots basically have to grow to it, and it doesn't move in the soil. But these bugs produce enzymes that basically dissociate that from whatever it's bound to, make it available. You have a greater root mass, and so we're able to capitalize a lot more of what we refer to as bioavailable phosphorus. Nutrient mobilization. We know these bacteria produce compounds that can take ferric iron, which is an unavailable source, convert it to ferrous, take it into their cells. When they die, it's in a plant available form to the plant. So there's a lot of different ways that we're enhancing the major elements and the minor elements. At the same time, we're reducing abiotic stress. Abiotic stress can be what I was talking about with stress alleviation, helping to get through drought processes. There's a number of pathways where that happens, but one is it basically they produce an enzyme that inhibits the accumulation of ethylene. And when you see plants under drought stress start to senesce or lose their leaves, turn brown, it's typically due to an increase in ethylene, and we can help reduce that from happening. So this is what's happening with what you're buying in your big bioyield. You're enhancing nutrient availability and uptake through the production of enzymes and organic acids that make a lot of elements more available. We are increasing the solubilization of phosphorus that can be bound to calcium, can be bound to aluminum, can be bound to a lot of elements, and making that more available. So if you have land that's been manured, or if you have land where your phosphorus levels are high, but you still feel like you're deficient, we can make that more available. Where it says root architecture, you have John used to send me pictures all the time of a better root mass, a greater root mass from the big bioyield. And what you have there is those organisms have the ability and produce hormones. Primarily they're auxins that stimulate a lot of root hair development, a lot more lateral roots. When you see that greater root mass for your nutrients like nitrogen, potassium that are mobile in the soil, you have more absorptive tissue there. So you're able to capture greater nutrient flow. That coupled with what I was talking about with the compounds that capture or release the iron, zinc, manganese, etc., as well as the phosphorus solubilization. This is what the whole fertilizer industry is looking at. What we do right now is to take advantage and help you capture more of the nutrients that you bought when you bought that ton of fertilizer. So it's when I'm thinking of innovation, that's what I'm kind of asking you. Just like I said, when the company that was referred to, you think of yourself as the customers. The more innovative you are, the more you're going to gain access to the nutrients that you purchased. So I know this is hard to see. When you say nutrient use efficiency, I want to read this. I don't normally like to read slides to you, but it says awareness and interest in improved nutrient use efficiency has never been greater. Why is that? Well, it's because of the price. It's because of the pressure that some states are starting to put on growers to do nutrient management plans, etc. So this is driven by a growing public belief that crop nutrients are excessive in the environment. And when you work in the Pacific Northwest, you hear a lot about this, as well as farmers' concern about rising fertilizer prices and stagnant crop prices. So you have an investment you made in this fertilizer, so they're saying that we want through the use of these organisms to capture it. Okay, but efficiency can be defined in a lot of different ways. So when you're talking about agronomic efficiency, it's defined as the nutrients accumulated in the above ground part of the plant or nutrients recovered within the entire soil crop root system. Economic efficiency, if you're talking to an ag economist, occurs when the farm income is maximized from proper use of the nutrients and inputs. When you're talking about environmental efficiency, that's going to vary from location to location. If you're in the Chesapeake Bay, Scott, you're very concerned about runoff. If you're on the Mississippi River and you have that zone of hypoxia down where it empties into the Gulf, you're very concerned about environmental efficiency. So depending on the viewpoint, whether you're looking at is what nutrient use efficiency is. But agronomic efficiency, if we take care of that, pretty well takes care of the other two. So we did a study with a bacterial grouping, and again, you can pretty much take this across the groups. When we look at the total uptake of the fertilizer that's applied, we saw a consistent gain of 2.2% in nitrogen, 3.2% in phosphorus, 2.8% in the micronutrients, with a yield bump of almost 4 bushels. So 4 bushels of non-GMO corn at $9 is $36. So it's a dang good return on the investment based on just using these microbes to gain efficiency. Take it a step further, and when you look at just an application of a product that we have that enhances phosphate solubilization, we didn't even get a statistical response on the phosphorus. It's numerical, not statistical. There's no star there. But you saw a statistical gain in nitrogen. You saw statistical gain in magnesium, sulfur, manganese, very statistical in zinc, iron, copper, and a numerical increase in boron. So you're gaining ground and capturing the money that you spent on the fertilizers. So what separates us in the industry when you look at the different companies, you look at the different products, we really are concerned about understanding a modes of action and recommending a rate that is effective without over-applying, and we do that by crop. We look when we spend a lot of money on trials and tests, and we try to stay above 80% all the time. The main problem that most people, when they're talking about biological products, is a lack of consistency. And we have that written right into our protocols of what we're looking for. So pricing, we want a really good return on the investment for the grower. So our target when we design a product is for every dollar you spend on that product that you make 3. That's our goal. Then ease of use. A lot of products in the biological sector require refrigeration. They require special handling. You can't leave them in the tank. They don't mix well with crop protection chemistries. They don't mix well with fertilizers. And we all know that when you're in a hurry and you're going to plant something, that's the last kind of problems you need. So we have formulation chemists that work very well with us, that we supply the active ingredients or the microbes that do the work, and they put it in a formulation that blends well with crop protection chemistries and fertilizers. The third one, or the last one, that we really strive for is that when we sell John a jug of product, that it's good for 2 years. Or if you blend it in a fertilizer, if the pH is not extreme, then it should hold up for 18 months. So we're not looking for something that's going to cause problems for the retailer or for the grower. We want a shelf-stable product that performs. So we do a lot of work with the University of Illinois. Dr. Fred Below is a plant physiologist there. And he made a statement about the Bacillus bacterium. They make great growth-promoting substances. When I was talking about the hormones, when I was talking about the organic acids, all the things that make the nutrients more available is what he's talking about there. And so there's a lot of growth promotion, and he stands behind our products very well. Then we had a guy tell us, anytime we can move nutrients faster into the plant, it's definitely a win-win for everybody. As a grower, I think you can appreciate that. If we can take those fertilizers, get more of them in the plant, there's all kind of figures out there on fertilizer loss, nutrient loss, what's not captured. So we feel strongly that we can help you get more bang for the buck. So I've kind of rushed through this, but my closing thoughts, and this is from Wayne Gretzky. So when you're making your purchases or you're deciding on your crop inputs and you're finding reasons not to strive to be better, he says, statistically speaking, 100% of the shots you don't take don't go in. So we feel like that kind of really fits with our message. And when I was thinking about John and Bill, its innovation is taking 2 things that already exist. You already got fertilizer, and we had a good microbial product. You put them together, and you get a much improved fertilizer with a win-win for the farmer. And with that, guys, I very much appreciate your attention, and I very much appreciate the opportunity to be here. And John?
Thanks,